This is Sarah Michelson, and I'm Philip Bither, and we are here to talk about Daylight from Minneapolis, which had its opening night last night here in the McGuire Theater and throughout the building of the Walker Art Center. And this is really, Sarah, just a chance for us to talk about, you know, I know it is just hours after the first realization of the work for a public, but the experience of making this work, the origins of the work, and some of the ideas behind the piece. And I guess I'd like to start with where, coming out of the success of Shadow Man 1 and 2 in New York, what you wanted to do with your next work, and what those early ideas, how they related to what we ultimately were able to achieve here.
Okay. When I was done with Shadow Man, I actually was kind of confused in some ways, because although I often objectify my own work inside my own work, meaning I repeat myself on purpose, I try cosmically to really not do the same thing again.
Yeah.
And so I was primarily concerned with what a venue could be for me, where I had a lot of questions about like going back into one of the same theaters, and I wasn't sure if I was attracted to any theaters, blah, blah, blah. And then I got...
Were you questioning the notion of theaters in general for dance at that moment? Or?
No, I actually love theater.
Yeah, yeah.
Theaters,
that's why
the construct of theaters.
Right.
But they're but I work with them very particularly, and in a weird way I felt like I had made work upstairs and downstairs at the kitchen, and definitely downstairs at PS 122, and I don't know, there was that, like, what would a venue be? And then there was also the feeling like I had sort of made a path for myself towards something, and I somehow in Shadow Man, I don't quite know how to say this, but I wanted to make something that I thought no one would copy, which, for lots of reasons. So I was thinking about what that would be, and what kind of venue could house something like that. And then I got invited to make a piece at PS 122, and I kind of didn't want to do it. And then...
That was when Mark Russell was still there.
And then I got invited to make a piece at BAM later, which made, somehow put all the ideas of confusion. I could really put all those ideas that the big ideas that I had in one place down the road, and then I got excited about PS 122, and then I don't remember what the order was between Mark Russell and you. I don't remember.
Well, Mark and I were talking at that time, and we were, he'd obviously been a supporter of your work before, you know, for several pieces, I think, and I was excited in all that I'd read and seen on video and things of your work, and that's when we started talking about, could we put some commissioning money, and he put some commissioning money, and we try to support something that had a relationship to each other, and that was just the early start. And then we met each other at the Merce Cunningham party, and I was imagining, I think at that point, this notion of this building being open for 4 or 5 months, but really not wanting to use it, you know, in any sort of normal way. In part because, and I'd love it, I haven't had a chance to ask you this, if you think this is accurate or not. At that moment in time, my feeling was that so many of the dance artists that were most interesting in New York, many of whom looked to you as an inspiration, I think, were really thinking about changing the normal relationship between audience and performance, and not necessarily using theaters in the way they typically are used, or even rejecting entirely the proscenium space. And here we were building this set formal theater, but this program had always had, you know, been spread all over town, and could produce work anywhere. So I thought it would be an important moment to change the nature of the relationship between audience and how this theater could be used and how the whole building could be used. But did you in fact feel that there was a moment in time, or maybe it still exists in New York, that actually the rejection of theater spaces for performance work, for dance, was really strong, and that you were in relationship to that thinking.
Yeah,
or
but that
not?
was like in the 60s.
Well, that was in the 60s
You
too.
know, and then you know, like, you know, in New York, it's kind of, everybody wants a gig, right? In a way. So then there's these structures that give you a gig, and those structures are theaters, and they're different sizes. Some of them are very small.
Right.
Some of them, they're barely theaters. They're like Ellie Coven's living room or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, and we all come up through that in New York. But I don't know, like Gia, my friend Gia, she knows a lot about that, really. But I really hesitate to say that. I think that, yeah, people make dances in lofts in Brooklyn, Williamsburg. I don't think that's probably in the last 2 years, if that's what you're talking about. That's re-emerged maybe in a mainstream way, like it's in Time Out or whatever. You know, like it's. But I don't know. Like, I'm not so interested in the rejection of theater, actually. And I'm not. I haven't made any performances in lofts or anything like that.
Yeah, and you also
make the performance in somebody's apartment. But I am more interested in the actual structure of the experience of being a performer who makes work in a theater, inside all the parts of that structure, and also in being a theater goer. So I go also to the theater to see my friends work. And there was a certain point where I had to justify to myself what was interesting about what I was doing, like, why am I doing dance? Because I think it's stupid very often. My own participation in all its ways included. And somehow what started to become important to me was the act of going to why do people want to be entertained in this way, or
challenged.
What is it?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know, challenged. I don't know if they do. But what is it all about? Going, buying a ticket, reserving a ticket, and then going to see some people prance about. What is that all about?
Right.
So that somehow.
Your interest in space and architecture has, you know, was so central to this work and has been often talked about as so central to your thinking. In our discussion around theaters and then your interest in innovative use of space, how do you see those two things colliding? Or
I don't think I've ever made a piece of work. I'm about to make one next year, but I don't think I've ever made a piece of work that wasn't originally inspired by the place where the work was first going to be seen. Like, I think that's. I think there are people, like, there's all that psychology about different kinds of thinkers.
Right.
And I'm like, and there's like the people who, I mean, whatever. I'm very like practical.
Yeah.
I spend time in that space, and then that's what happens.
When we think about going back to the original Daylight, you're thinking about it, PS 122 as a space that's experienced in a certain kind of way. You had just said you were debating, did you really want to go back, perform again in a space you'd already been in, had a relationship with? Did that lead to your interest in reinventing that space as well?
Actually, yeah, two things happened. The meeting with Christina in Basel, and then her ideas about
Christina Brunswanger.
About creating this theater, and then that going into my brain alongside how I understand PS 122 to exist as a theater, and kind of knowing that as she was talking globally about theater, there wasn't a PS 122 available to her as an idea, but it was so present for me that those two ideas together became this project.
Which explains in our early days after you met Christine, we talked about the conflating of not just spaces but cities in a certain way, of New York City, your home, where you've done most of your work, Minneapolis, a new place for you, but this art center is here, and how layers of these two places and spaces could be overlaid on top of one another. Did that stay with the work, would you say?
For me, I mean, I don't know for how many people, definitely, you know, my friend Gia and Marty are here, but Gia and Marty who saw the piece in New York, and Marty who helped stencil the stencil that is now the stencil everywhere, and then for her to see the original Herzog and Meuron stencils.
And also to kind of be in this whole construction, which is a little like...
And the fabric is like wins. And if you want to really answer that question, the fact that we spent all that money we didn't have on that fabric, you know, to make and then have that fabric sit inside the auditorium.
It's so fantastic to be here and seeing it against the fabric of the seats.
Which is, that's the part I always imagined. That's the thing I held on to really tightly.
Right,
so.
right. Well, when you, we've talked about this a lot too, but I haven't actually heard the details, and I'd love to have you revisit that meeting with Christine from Herzog and Meuron. I know you went to Basel
with Parker.
With Parker, and we helped you guys meet each other, and I know she was probably crazy busy getting her 1,000 projects.
She's very cute. We waited a long time. We went in matching outfits. We were Victor and Rolf. We went in matching outfits.
And I'd done this all via email, so she didn't really know like who you were.
Right, or anything. You know, she's very cute, and I got her name wrong. Called her Cheryl, I think. And she was like, it's not Cheryl. It was after the whole meeting, too. I was like, oh, man. But she...
Did you launch right in and say, tell me about your ideas for this program?
No, she actually was very helpful, but she just said, I don't really know how to do this. Why don't I give you a PowerPoint presentation?
Oh.
And I said, okay. It was really just like that. And then, so it's quite dry, actually, and she was showing this stuff. But then, the things that she was very excited about were, she was very, very, very excited about the handmade aspect of this building. The fact that the outside of the building and these black panels in here were originally, they made shapes and shapes and shapes out of materials and materials and materials by hand. And then when they found one, then they replicated that by machine, but that the original was handmade. She said that many, 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 many times. And then, of course, there's, I mean, it's so dumb to even say this on videotape. I'm embarrassed, people. But you know, of course, there is that obvious sort of handmade equals homemade PS 122 versus the Walker Art Center kind of thing. And I don't know why that was really fun to me. And then lace and like ideas that, you know, that are all over the Walker Art Center now, but which this building didn't exist at that time. And she was saying to me stuff about, you know, about Richard and Kathy talking about, I guess they had ideas that Richard and Kathy didn't think were very theatrical and said, give us more theater. And so they went back to the drawing board and like, what is theater? And then their answer to that was hide and reveal, which I guess that, I mean, I don't know really what to do with that, except I get it. I guess so then they came up with lace. So then these patterns became lace, and then the fabric has like lace, and then she brought me a swatch of the fabric, but it wasn't this fabric, it was this fabric with different colors.
No, and it was so funny, you know, you guys got this fabric because we
were like, it's
organized
the wrong fabric.
And you told me the color of the fabric, and I said, they sent you the wrong fabric. Of course, in the interim, someone else here had decided to switch the color of the fabric, and they sent you the right fabric, but I didn't even know what the fabric was anymore. It was really funny,
and then, because we had made all our color schemes to the other fabric, we had to like do some quick changing. So yeah, and she was very, very nice. She was very excited about the building. She talked a lot about shopping, that Hennepin is shopping down the other end. And so inside, outside, when, you know, all that stuff that's all over the building. And then I created those ideas in PS 122 in ways that are obvious only to a few, I guess, but satisfying to me.
Yeah, that's great. Were there, those key kind of concepts that Christine and Jacques, and they were, you know, coming up with for our building, or that define their practice as architects, as you just mentioned them, some of them seem to be already in line with ways you work, or things that
are they? Like, what do you mean?
Like reveal and not reveal, or maybe that was partly what Kathy and Richard were layering onto them to try to make the space more theatrical. But the sense of being able to see some things but not everything. Or,
I guess so. That's really funny because because I was slightly, just ever so slightly disdainful of those ideas. But yes, you're right. Probably mine are. Yeah.
Where did you feel like the disdain because?
They seem
architects at that-
simplistic.
Yeah.
They seem simplistic about theater.
Uh-huh.
I was like, oh, really?
Right. When they were talking theater, were they talking about this theater or theater, like making the building theatrical?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was both. They were like, theater,
they
hide and
used
reveal.
You, like,
know?
to advise.
I know. But anyway, you're right, probably. Although I'm not as much into hiding as I am into revealing.
Right.
By maybe making viewpoints more awkward, just revealing maybe the assumptions about viewpoints or something.
Right.
I don't know.
Which maybe raises the kind of desire to view if parts are not revealed.
Yes. It's funny that people don't want. Yes, I'm not going to make generalizations about people. I'll cut that right out.
Did you think this notion of stenciling was was interesting of when Herzog and de Meuron were talking about it, and therefore you thought it could be an interesting visual through line for your work here and at PS?
You know, I don't think as clearly as that. It's much more like I follow very basic instincts. I pick up on things, and then after it's all done, it is kind of easy to theorize about it retroactively. But I think the PowerPoint presentation had design features and stencils all the way through it. And I thought if I'm going to, once I got the idea that I wanted to replicate that PS 122, it seemed like there was no way to do it without making a stencil. So then there was, interestingly, in my backyard, the super of my building, Cheddar, who built the walls in PS 122 because he's a construction guy, had worked on construction of De La Guardia when it turned out from a bank into in Union Square, into the theater that had De La Guardia, and he had the big iron bank grids out of that. So we made our stencil design from those 1930s.
Is it those stencils?
Yes.
That,
So that's from both from my backyard and also from De La Guardia. So that's just a funny detail. Yeah.
Did
about
you
hide and reveal?
You were here in February of '04. You came to visit us, and it was freezing cold.
On the closing of the old building.
Closing of, that's right. And Force Entertainment was here, and you had a chance to meet with Howard Aransky, and you toured around, and then you came back. Not really until about
the following February, wasn't it?
Was it again? But the building was the building. Oh, that's right. The building was up, and it was in sort of rough state. In that process of coming back a year later and then coming back once the theater had already been open for a few months, was it a lot different than you expected it to be? Were the challenges more or less than what you imagined in terms of mounting this work here and things like that?
The challenges in mounting this work here were huge, but they were not so much. The theater itself looked exactly how I expected it to look from the descriptions I had and seen and the process of it coming to be. The building didn't look exactly how I thought it would look, but the challenges, somehow, I don't mean to, but somehow when I make work in the theater, I always come directly into conflict with the assumptions of the people who provide theater. So the technical design team, like marketing, all of that stuff, the real structure of theater, I end up coming into conflict with, not because I want to, but because somehow the nature of the beast requires some deviance from the formula on all levels. And that was very challenging, partly because this is a new building and I think people are nervous about it and don't know so well, and so they're really holding on to formula. And secondly, because the institution is so big and there's so many parts of it, so it's very difficult to get an answer from one person, a clear one answer. And thirdly, because I used 50 local people and that was scheduling. Just scheduling alone. Yeah,
we started wanting 100.
Yes, and thank God we didn't have 100. And thank God every day. Thanks God, as Cheddar would say. But yeah.
And tell me about that choice too. I mean, I know we were kind of interested in what you'd done with people in a community that were not part of your company, young dancers and other people who live here and things. But it was central to your thinking about this
Yeah,
work
I feel
too,
like, definitely I feel like I came in with that.
Yeah.
You know, I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do in the building. But
was that partly so that you could fill the space?
Yeah, it was just, at first it was easy. I was like, okay, well, if I get 100 people, that's going to be something.
Right, yeah.
You know, like I'll start there. But then it didn't turn, I actually didn't end up wanting to do it like that anyway. And then, yeah, I don't know, what was your question?
Well, just kind of the motivation behind involving...
yeah, at first it was easy filler. It didn't turn into that.
Right, what did it turn into?
It turned into me expecting 50 youth and women over 50 from this local, from Minneapolis, to be as good and dedicated and committed as the Lyon Opera Ballet were to the movements I was teaching them. So it turned into like a massive challenge for me.
Right.
Which they were, by the way, up to. But
one of the things that I am so impressed, just marvel at, is how you are able to get 50 people who don't know you at all. A lot of their parents who are, you know, wigged out or whatever, and the kids who are so, you know, they're all over the place in terms of age and things like that. And you had them rehearse so rigorously, and they were so dedicated to you. I mean, they were, you know, you were working with complex ideas, and they were completely, like you said, they would be. They're the biggest, they're huge advocates and things like that. What is it about that process? Is it simply the simple notion that if you hold expectations high enough, as they say, you know, with public school management and anything else, that people will rise to the occasion, and that will actually be a more meaningful experience for them? Maybe.
I mean, I don't know. I don't have any children. I don't know how people raise children or what, you know. In my experience of working with kids, I found several times that people said to me, administrators, as I was going to work with kids, you know, for shadow men and everything, like, oh, they can't rehearse that many hours. Oh, the kids can't. Oh, they're not going to be able to do that. They're not going to be able to remember. Blah blah blah.
Yeah, right.
I actually find that the opposite is true. That if you actually don't speak down to children, tell them exactly, in language that they understand, of course, but tell them exactly what you're going through, what you're thinking, why you want to do it this way, and then tell them how hard it is, and tell them, you know, and just, they totally rise to the occasion. And these kids were actually incredible. I am very moved by them, like really incredible.
Yeah, it's just stunning to see the level of concentration and commitment, and you know, the kind of
some of them didn't miss one rehearsal. Some of them did not miss one rehearsal. You know, like going like this. Yeah. You know.
Right. That movement, some of the movement vocabulary you used with the kids and the older women, were variations on other movement you've used with
that was recycled. No, it wasn't anything to do with Shadow Man. That movement is I just made a piece for the Lyon Opera Ballet, and I basically stole it and remade it. I like to do that. Yeah. And remade it on these kids, and then told them they had to be as good.
So when you, you know, in this past month, as the piece has come together, another element of what defines the work is portraiture, or the portraits. The starting point where the portrait's sitting behind us of the dancers that Claude Wampler designed, and I wondered if you would want to talk about that aspect, what those meant to you when they were first made, and what the other portraits of people who work here, a lot of portraits of me and things like that, how you saw those fitting in, especially maybe here in a Contemporary Arts Center and things like that.
Well, the original Daylights ones, these ones, obviously well, I think they're beautiful, but they're like kind of a, you know, they're a joke, they're a deification of us, you know. It's kind of disgusting in a way, you know. Right. But that's a kind of acknowledgement of what it means to be, you know, dancing and making work in New York, and that we make this work, and then people come and see the four of us dancing together. You know, we're like a group, and you know what I mean. Right. It's like they expect we are certain personalities. We blah blah blah. So it's just kind of, I don't know, something to do with that.
Yeah. And
then when we went to Lyon to make Love Is Everything, I had Claude make portraits of Yorgos Lukas, the director of Lyon Opera Ballet, because it was different reasons in here, but because he decided with my work he wanted to take the opera goers out of the opera house and do something modern and new and take them to this warehouse theater. So in that case, he ended up representing the Lyon Opera Ballet. The Lyon Opera Ballet decorating the warehouse.
Different space and things like that, yeah.
In your case, it was to do with the difficulty of being the discarded art form like performance art inside an art house that values other forms more highly, and making art objects that were you and placing them as props. You know, it has implications. I mean, lots of different implications really, but yeah, and it was, you know, as it was disgusting for you, and you had a lot of trouble with that, and then there was a lot of trouble with, I wasn't allowed to lean them anywhere, I wasn't allowed to put them anywhere, like the problems I had with where we're going to put them.
Well, which also raised interesting institutional questions, which is, I think, a really
I could put kids anywhere.
Yeah, right.
But I couldn't put a picture of you hardly anywhere at all.
Right.
So,
and the same would have been the case if it was a picture of anything.
Yes,
you know?
but you know, because it's an art object, but a kid isn't. Even if the kid is in a stenciled outfit, not moving. So it's kind of complicated. It's simple.
Are you interested in those questions? I mean, obviously, it raises such interesting questions, especially for an art center.
I mean, I'm not sure if I'm interested in it particularly.
I'm interested in it because I live it.
Okay, yeah.
No, I mean, it's interesting because a contemporary art center ideally is a place where there's a total fluidity between disciplines.
I know, but you just have to face it, Philip. Nobody really cares about dance in the way that they can't, in that way. That's why.
Yeah.
It's dismissible. You know what I mean? It's, you know, it's like, I don't know, Tracy Emin's Bed isn't dismissible, but like, dance pieces are dismissible unless they have enough weight and history behind them. And usually, it's hard in America because usually that requires money. Right. You know, like if you like the Robert Rauschenberg, Merce Cunningham days are kind of over. Right. You know, like this when, you know, y'all have that here. Yeah. You know, you have that set here, and that is okay. That can be in a gallery because it's bona fide art at this point. The reason we can't put anything out there is because it's not, even if you've curated it to be important enough to be in this theater, it's not bona fide art. Yeah. It isn't, it hasn't proved itself outside of your power structure, and therefore it can't touch the other power structure. Yeah. And maybe it's the same the other way around. Maybe you'd say no if they wanted to put something in here. Right. You'd be like, forget it, Buster. Yeah.
There are, you know, when you structure a place based on disciplinary expertise and sort of ways of functioning, you're absolutely, it does end up in these different ways of functioning and different ways of approving and validating work. It's interesting that you raise, because I also, in some conversations, pointed to the parallel around the Walk-Around Time set piece by Jasper Johns, because I was just mentioning to Gia and Marty earlier today, he told us, told the visual art curators, that this is not a piece of art. You should know that. This is a set piece, and I don't consider it art, and are you sure you want to buy this thing? Because we bought it from the Cunningham Company. But at that point, the Walker, we really made a decision that, yes, we're making a point here by buying a set piece, and we defined it as art, even if the artist didn't necessarily. So we could go there with Jasper Johns, but I think what I didn't do in the terms of the time frames that are needed, the 2 year out,
Right.
is to do the groundwork with my colleagues in visual art and in the director's office to define yours and Claude's work with a different set of criteria than what I have the total freedom to do, which is put anything on the
But also, I'm
stage.
even just going to say this very bold thing. It's like, yeah, you know, Claude did these portraits, but it's not her work. I mean, she did them.
Right.
But actually, the visual part of this is mine and Parker's work.
Right.
And that's a very interesting thing because everybody wants to cling on to Claude because she's the visual artist.
Right.
And that's much easier for everybody than the fact that me and one of my dancers maybe had the ideas.
Right.
We asked someone to make some portraits of us.
Right.
Do you know, like,
sure.
So, but everyone's like, oh yeah, Claude, or oh yeah, Dominic, and me and Parker are like, hold on a second.
Right.
So I've started to be not like, I'm not credit hungry, but I've started to be, to notice that that's a thing. Because I'm sick of it.
Right, yeah.
I don't know how to paint portraits, or I would have done it myself to get over this problem.
Yeah, right.
You know?
Yeah.
Not, I mean, Claude's brilliant work, and these are her, these is her idea to do them like this.
Yeah.
It is totally her work in that way.
Right.
I'm really not taking away from that. But the design of this environment
piece,
and of this piece
right.
is by me with help from my friend Parker Lutz, and then we ask people to.
Do you find it discouraging on a macro level that, I mean, we so often talk about...
I'll flip my disc.
That's okay. We talk at an exciting moment that, in fact, these classifications of video art and installation work and performance and are sort of breaking down. And but in reality, there are still old structures that exist. I wonder if you, as an artist who straddle worlds yourself, of performance and dance and installation, do you get discouraged by how often those structures rear their heads up and try to limit, you know, end up feeling like they're limiting what's possible for an artist to do?
That's a funny one, because when I'm in action, it totally seems like I am. I guess I want to say two things to that. One thing is, I'm not necessarily excited by the blurring. It's okay.
Right.
But I definitely am a dance artist.
Yeah.
If I straddle something else, I straddle it from the position of someone who makes dances.
Right.
And the things that I do maybe aren't interesting in a visual arts context. They're interesting because I'm doing them as a dance artist and that's my expertise, is theater going, like I said, really on a basic level.
Right.
And so for me, boundaries breaking down, it's very exciting when I go, I love lots and lots of things, like I love many things in your permanent collection, and I like the way that visual art is becoming unbuyable, you know, or like
non-object based.
All of that stuff is very exciting. But in terms of my career or my expertise, I guess he wants me to do that again, right? Flip that over. I don't know. He's not going to stay. I can bet. I don't know. It's a black. It goes here. I don't know. I feel like the frustration comes when. This is maybe going to sound like I'm disgusting and arrogant, but I'll take the risk because I'm not. I do think that some of the things I do ultimately might be, they're in their attempts, their generous attempts to be useful for theater. Like, they're reinvigorating, or they're like just shifting slightly so that something happens. But then the part that is frustrating is the resistance to that shift.
Resistance from critics, from
like even like
from
no, it's from not critics or presenters, or except for you, but not critics or presenters. No, resistance from the theater structures. So, like I say, marketing people, technical people.
Right.
They don't want to build drywall, they want to build flats.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, I want to build drywall. It's very expensive, but I know.
Right.
Like those things are very frustrating for me because I'm trying to not build flats.
Right.
That's the point.
Right.
So that kind of stuff, and yeah, like, I'm just trying to think. I don't know. Yeah, but that stuff is frustrating because although I think one of the things I feel like is well publicized that I'm poor and tired and stuff, and I feel like I've done a lot of that pushing, and then the thing that gets popular, and then lighting designers is another group of people, not Joe Lavasser and Davison, but like who go, what, you can't do that, I don't want, that's gonna look stupid, really, what? And then the next show I see, it's all over the place, and in fact people, so that stuff, that makes, I told you it was gonna make me sound arrogant, I don't mean to be, but then suddenly people want to make like shape-shifting work, everyone wants to turn the chairs around at the kitchen, everybody, you know, and that's, I guess that's why I'm doing it, that's great, but then I just wish, and that would be so fine if I wasn't so tired from like hacking down the trees on the way.
I think your work is setting the future for where dance can go, but the struggle seems like it's so hard to, you know, the structures that have been built for dance, touring, you know, certain kinds of funding.
Even just painting booms white, Philip.
Right, yeah.
That is months of discussion and arguing.
Right.
Months. Not only here, PS 122, and like that, just painting booms or sticks white.
Right.
So just that one aspect, let's just take that. Or like the molding, it's falling off the walls, because then last minute we find, even though that's in the technical rider, we can't drill into the wall. So all through the show last night, the molding is falling off the wall because they double-sided taped it because it's theatrical. We have to fix that today. But do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like those are the things
that
are difficult because the whole thing is supposed to be real, not fake.
Right.
Even though it's a set.
Yeah.
You know, and that's a place of resistance inside theater.
In that sense, you do share things with visual artists I've worked with making their theatrical work, because they too will look at fake stuff on stage that's meant as theater props, or like, yeah, this really is a stone, but you know, you can pick it up, and they won't go there with that.
Yeah.
They want it to be real, and that is partly why I found it interesting to invite artists out of other disciplines to make their first, you know, theater performance works, because they're not willing to kind of do the normal theater thing. And it's interesting that you've been able to, the strength of your convictions has allowed you to maintain those standards, even though your origins came out of the theatrical worlds.
Yeah, for some reason I can't do it another way. Like I can't, I would be too humiliated. I can't go on the stage. Like I wouldn't be able to make the thing if I didn't do it that way.
Right.
And that's just from the very beginning. That's staying up all night painting Dixon Place blue, staying up all night painting PS 122 white, finding like all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Up until the last couple of years, I did it all myself.
Right.
And even this show, PS 122, I did myself with my friends.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
But
do you see an easier...
And that's actually easier. Not to be weird.
Right. No,
it's actually easier.
You know what
this
you
would
want,
have happened. Not these. I don't know how to do this stuff.
Right.
But this stuff would have been
the drywall.
Not the drywall, but the painting and the detailing would have happened a lot faster if me and Parker had done it with Marty and Andrea.
But you are at a point in your career as an artist that you shouldn't have to do.
But no one will do it the way I want to do it.
Right.
I don't know why.
Yeah.
They think they can do it a different way, and then I'm like, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to do that again because it looks like crap. Yeah, fake.
Yeah. So how you're taking this? There's another version of Daylight that's going to happen in Seattle in a few weeks.
Yes.
And then do you see the chapter of Daylight being over, or we're talking about a book a little bit?
Right.
I think it will be great to see. I'm hoping our photographers have captured a lot of great images and things like that, but that may be a fourth installment of Daylight, especially if this funding comes through and things. But do you see then the BAM work as a completely another cycle or another?
I am now. I have some very clear ideas. There are some references to this that actually were planned for the BAM show before this even started, that I think will still happen at BAM, but actually influenced this show.
Huh.
You know, so I think those things will still happen, but I think
it's interesting because that's the cycle kind of that we went through, sort of
yeah.
like the Walker influencing the PS show.
Yeah.
Hmm. Do you feel that insistence and commitment to the detail, that in some ways you could argue those that resist don't realize that it's those small items collectively that give people a sense that they're seeing something really fresh and something brand new.
I don't know about fresh or brand new, and I'm not
but, you know, something
not sure that I value
different.
that so highly.
Yeah.
But I do think that they give that ultimately those details. I don't know, you know, I don't know about people except for myself, and then, you know, what my friends tell me. But my belief is that those details make the work seem fully articulate, like it's that the audience member or the watcher or whatever has been taken care of by me completely, and for better or for worse, whether they do or don't like the work,
but they can
have understood what
together.
The work. There isn't a place where if there's something that seems like it might be a mistake, they probably know that is purposeful because there's so many details.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Could we go for a second to, you told me the other day that you wanted to make with this work a pure dance work because in the past, you know, people had defined you in a certain kind of, put you in a certain kind of box, and would have maybe not expected you to create the kind of choreography you did for Daylight. Was that accurate? And would you say that?
It's almost accurate.
Yeah.
It's more that I think the thing that I said the other day was that earlier, and again, Gia can probably attest to this, I think that people thought that the work I made was kind of like fun or funny or something because it had Mike Iverson in it. You know, like, but I think that I'm formal.
Right.
And very serious.
Yeah.
And not really fun, and actually making very structured work with just structuring it with different ingredients.
Right.
But when I made the show Daylight, the New York version, I wanted to make a modern dance because I thought that that would not be copyable.
Did it have to do with your also? Well, to follow that up, we did say the other day too, my next question to you was, well, are you finding a lot of people copying your work? And I'm sure you are throughout downtown.
I feel embarrassed to talk about that.
Okay, Gia, do you have?
Gia's like, Gia's going crazy.
Do you mind being on camera? Tell us.
To younger people who think they're making something new, possibly. But copies.
All over downtown and uptown. And
that's cute.
That's totally, I mean, I am sure that's the case. That would be my impression. Is that it's insular and
that everyone's copying Sarah.
Oh my God.
And that's what's so exciting about
Sarah's
work getting to the hinterlands. In some ways, this is sort of the first big engagement. I'm afraid what you're going to say, so I maybe shouldn't even ask this question. But is there, I mean, you've worked a lot in Europe, you've worked a lot in New York, you've done your earlier work in San Francisco and things like that. But, you know, your work is now in America, you know, in the Midwest. And
yeah, this is the first one. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, what was it?
You're the first guy who went out on the limb
I'm
in
not
America.
Saying that. I'm saying, is this a weird? Was it a different
kind of? Oh God, it's so different. I feel like I live in Minneapolis. I do not understand the middle of America.
Right.
It's like I'm from Europe. I'm used to being on the edge.
Yes.
You know, like you can get to the edge and you can get a newspaper and stuff.
Yeah. Right.
You know,
you can get on a boat or a plane.
Yeah, I don't know.
You can get on a plane here,
but I'm just not used to it. It's just funny, but I've actually had a really great time in some ways.
Yeah.
Like I say, I really, it sounds so lovey-dovey and weird community work of me, but the kids have been the most incredible part of this, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
And not because oh, they're kids, isn't that cute, but because people always said to me, G included, that people from the Midwest are really nice, you know, like nice. People from Minneapolis, they have that reputation, that they're nice and fair. And these kids are very well balanced and fair and share with each other and talk. And once I worked with them on kind of like concise critical discourse, we're very willing to be concisely critical with each other and super evolved and really great ideas and actually not at all, we're very sophisticated, completely excited by dancing in a chair and, or being almost invisible, like completely excited about that.
Right. Huh.
So
that bodes well for the future
of your town. Yeah, it really does.
Right.
They actually were so incredible, and also the people who painted the portraits and helped do the stenciling and stuff here, all the stuff on the windows and stuff. So neat. It's really neat, and that part of it is very has been very inspiring and humbling, actually, for me. Really humbling.
In what way? Humbling, just...
Well, because I always have these ideas and local people and, I don't know, and then I feel, this is gonna sound dorky, but kind of not worthy of them. I know that I brought something to them and that they learned something from this and all of that, but really their commitment and their generosity is so 100% that it is humbling when you're with someone who's really like good or something. Like they're amazing. They're really amazing. They're really holding up their end of the deal, you know. So.
Well, they've been. I mean, the impact you're having on them will be felt. You know, it's going to be with them for years and years. And you know, Mary and their teachers are at Perfect Center for the Arts have felt that this is just one of the best kinds of projects that could ever happen for these kids. So.
That's great.
There's I know we're hopping around, there's just the last couple of questions, but two of the things that is often referenced, words that are used about your work, and I just wondered if you could comment on it at all, and that I've felt when I see your work is the words of elegance and mystery. Elegance being sort of an odd notion in the 21st century, but there's something, I think the word also I used after I saw Daylight at PS was kind of magisterial or something. There's just something, you know, large and beautiful. These are all bad adjectives to use, but elegant. There's something.
They're actually not bad adjectives. They're very flattering.
Well, how are you able to capture that sense of this kind of uniquely defined elegance and also this sense of
Well, I have
mystery?
really amazing performers that work with me, and I think that they're elegant. So I think I have to say that that's probably a big part of that. They're also mysterious and majestical, I'm sure. I really have been very lucky in that way. I have very incredible people that work with me.
And those are collaborators you've been now working with for a number of years.
5, yeah.
Is that essential to the power of your work?
You know, I used to really think it was. Recently, I think is definitely, I mean, my relationship with Parker definitely is very exciting and relaxing and totally makes the work better. But I also have learned in my experiences with the kids, with no one here, and in Lyon with no one there, that there is also something that I'm doing that the essence of the work is in it, and is weird. So I don't know. So it's both.
Well, I think your oversight and involvement in all the details, what we talked about earlier, of being able to sort of maintain a standard by insisting upon all of the aspects being the way you feel they need to be. But also, I think there's something about...
And Parker's very much like that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's how that partnership, I mean, it's interesting.
That's the way that partnership works.
You guys would look at a lot of things together throughout the building.
Yeah.
And you rely
because
on her
when
as a kind of...
often what happens is that when I I really see something, but I'm either tired because I've been here longer, or I'm bulking, she'll be like, you have to do it. You know, she'll give me that.
Right. You also bring so much, to my mind, to the work as a performer, and we were talking the other day, you know, some of that elegance and that mystery comes clearly from you as a presence on stage.
Mm.
And do you feel like you're gonna always want to perform? Or?
No, I'm done.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
After this work? Or
After this work, I think so, yeah.
Is your injury bothering?
Yeah, it just sucks. Yeah.
Right.
And you know, when I made the thing in Lyon and I saw all those Lyonnese
Ballerinas
ballet
and-
dancers do
right.
it, I realized it did not need me. It can translate
Right.
at this point.
What do you think the future holds for you in terms of the means by which you'll be expressing yourself and the post-BAM, you know, life in the theater?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
I need a job.
Yeah.
I hope I can get an exciting job of some kind. I don't know.
Do you have hopes at all that this country will get to a point where the structures that support innovators like yourself will come to a level that feels like work of this scale is sustainable, and your work as an artist, a creative artist, can be supported adequately?
I guess, you know, the obvious answer to that is yes. I don't know how attached I am to the struggle itself.
Mm-hmm.
I have a fantasy that I would have like a place to live where I could work and I could build sets there and make things there, and then, I don't know, make huge projects or movies there, or I don't know.
Plan big
thing.
Right.
I have
Yeah.
that. That's definitely a fantasy.
A watermill or something.
Yes, little rabbits going by. No, I don't know.
Robert Wilson's place.
Yeah, no. But I don't know. I don't know, Philip.
Do you have any other thoughts about this work, or this, you know, this moment in time in your work? Because I guess I would like to say that I think that there are beacons of hope to catch up to your work as an artist that could arise to support work of this scale. I mean, that's I don't see them around the corner, but I don't see an artist of, you know, that's creating work in the way you are to not be able for this culture to find a way to support your next works. There's, you know, it just feels like it's too much of a loss. So I hope you don't give up hope.
That's cute. Thanks, Philip. Thank you.
Maybe we should end it at that.
Yeah, very cheerful. Thanks.